you just sleep like 4, maybe 5 hours on average, at some point you're going to get sick more often. Your hair is going to get more brittle. Your nails are going to go more brittle. You might have more injuries in the gym. Your hunger signals are all over the place. Maybe you're putting on more lower belly fat, even though you haven't actually changed anything when it comes to your nutrition. All these kind of things start coming on.
What if I told you that the same mindset that builds championship teams also builds an extraordinary life? The same discipline that drives elite performance to greatness is the discipline that unlocks a longer, stronger, and more resilient future. This is where peak health meets peak performance, where we explore the science of longevity and the mindset of greatness. Because your legacy isn't just what you leave behind, it's what you show up with every single day. This is the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. I'm Zach Dancel, your host. Welcome back to the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. Today, we're talking about something that sounds simple but incredibly hard to live out in the real world, which is sustainable health. Not extremes, not detoxes, not the 6 weeks transformation that leave you just burnt out and having to start over, but real health. Health that supports performance, leadership, longevity, and a life that you actually enjoy living. My guest today lives this philosophy. Lisa Franz is a nutrition coach, a podcaster, a former police officer, and the founder of Nutrition Coaching and Life. She's lived a life of what it feels like to burn out, the diet restriction, the shift work, and the full mental and physical depletion. So instead of just chasing another extreme, she built this philosophy around this evidence-based nutrition that are very aligned with what we talk a lot about on this podcast and what we talk about at Nava, as well as just the mindset, right? The consistency of, having that sort of freedom. So again, this episode isn't about perfection, right? It's about becoming the CEO of your own health, right? The discipline over obsession and building a body that actually supports the life that we want to live. So Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Zach. I'm super excited for our conversation here today. And as you said, consistency and sustainability when it comes to nutrition and just in general, our lifestyle is something that is so near and dear to my heart. So I'm really, really excited to talk about it today.
No, I'm super excited to have you on the show. Lisa, you didn't arrive at sustainable health, just from theory, right? You had to earn it through contrast, right? You worked as a police officer in New Zealand, which I can imagine can be high stress. There's shift work and real pressure, right? Because lives can be at stake and there's can be a lot that's just going on in the police workforce. What was it like, during that period, and what signals did your body and mind, start sending you that, something might not have been right?
Oh, yeah, there were so many signals, but I think the tricky thing is, Zach, that initially when we put our body under stress, and thankfully so, it is so great at dealing with these stressors. So oftentimes it really also just feels like excitement and kind of fun. And I don't know about the listeners, but anybody who also might have done something like CrossFit or like really hard trainings, it's fun. Afterwards, you feel accomplished. You feel like you've actually done something and challenged yourself. So it usually isn't, from my personal experience and from my clients' experience, it isn't until a few months or maybe sometimes even years down the road where the toll starts to show and the body's like, this far and no longer. So for me, it actually took a few years until I really noticed my mental health declining. Like, for example, I woke up a few times and I was just like, well, if I wasn't here today, then that would be fine too. And that might not be so strange for some people, but for me, I'm a very positive person. I love life. And so waking up and thinking like, if I die today, it's no issue, is like, oh, hang on, you should dig into that. And then, as you mentioned, like the sleep thing too, after a while, like your body makes up for that or deals with that for some time, as probably most of the young parents here might know as well. If it's only for a limited amount of time, you can deal with it. But if it goes on for years and years and you just sleep like 4, maybe 5 hours on average, at some point you're going to get sick more often. Your hair is going to get more brittle. Your nails are going to go more brittle. You might have more injuries in the gym. your hunger signals are all over the place. Maybe you're putting on more lower belly fat, even though you haven't actually changed anything when it comes to your nutrition. All these kind of things start coming on. So I think we have to be really grateful to our bodies that they are so adaptable and really can make up for a certain amount of really high stress phases. Let's just say if we're looking at our ancestors when there were hunger periods, or when they did have to chase lions or run away from something, that is great. But if it turns into chronic stress, at some point our body is going to say stop. And that definitely, on top of the mental health thing, and then noticing some hormonal issues and really noticing how it was starting to affect me with injuries in terms of training as well, was a very big wake up call for me. And to your point of like sustainability, even before the police, my nutrition and lifestyle wasn't sustainable. I didn't really have a proper sleep hygiene. I just went to bed whenever. I forced myself through various different diets, such as high or low fat, such as paleo, keto, whatever. So it really was never sustainable. It always felt restricted when it came to the food part as well. And both of these things together have really made me very passionate nowadays about teaching that neither of those things, and I'm tipping my hat to all the shift workers out there that really don't have the option of creating a proper sleep routine. Well, I mean, we can still have a good sleep routine given the parameters, I guess, but nonetheless, I think everybody else should work on these baseline habits in order to really get to a point of not just surviving, but thriving, which is what I'm all about, what you are all about, what your company is all about. And I just love that you're promoting that.
Yeah. No, I really love the approach that you take and talk about, when it comes to, sustainable health versus extremes, because I think we're in such a space today where, so much is being diluted with just, so much information, right? Where people are getting this, it's almost like the whole analysis paralysis. It's basically like it's information paralysis, but it is about making the changes and the daily habits of what you're trying to accomplish to be more sustainable, right? At Nava, we see it daily. People don't fail because of their lack of motivation. They fail because the system that they have set up, it just can't survive real life, right? You got kids, you got careers, stress, travel, whatever it might be. So, how do you define sustainable health, and where do most people go wrong when they think about if are they being disciplined?
Yeah, that's a really great question, great way to phrase it. For me, sustainable health is an approach that allows you to, yeah, as you mentioned in my introduction, also appreciate life and its ups and downs and flows and travel and being social and so on, while at the same time doing your very best to not just live normally or get by, in contrast to that, actually feel great on a day-to-day basis with steady energy levels, with the capability of performing physically and mentally as best as you can, being the best dad, mom, son, whatever it is. Like literally for me, even though sustainability sounds kind of, yeah, boring, I guess, if we will. And for me, it's absolutely not. It is a vehicle to continuous improvement, because anything that's in an extreme uh, area is not going to, might just momentarily give us a spike, and then we're probably having a setback. And maybe then we're progressing a little bit and then we have a setback. And this whole up and down is, I think, where people go wrong. They want something too aggressive, they want something too quick, and they're not considering, am I actually willing to or able to give up the sacrifices that would require? So often I hear, oh, I want to drop 10 pounds, or I'd love to get in the best shape of my life. And then we're having the discussion of, okay, are you willing to or able to reduce or cut out the daily glass of wine that you're consuming at night? No, not really. I really like that in there. All right. Well, are you willing to and able to not go out on a cheat meal or day with your friends every Saturday? Oh no, that's actually really important to me. Okay, well, we need to talk about this because you can't expect to see change while not making any changes. So I really think that that's one place where people go wrong, or they might be wanting to or willing to sacrifice that for 6 weeks, but then they're like after that, well, where do you go back to? And I really don't see myself as a successful coach if I only help my clients to get to the goal, but they're not able to maintain it. I'm sure it's the same for you. Yeah, you could probably more easily get someone quote unquote healthy again. But if 3 months down the road or even 3 years down the road, they're back at square one, you probably don't see yourself as a successful practitioner. And that's really what I want people to focus on, not just like where am I going to be at in 6 weeks or even in 6 months' time, but how do I feel, look, and perform in 6 years or even 20 years down the road. And for me, I think just like with your company, I want to help people to live not just longer, but really longer with good quality, because what is longevity if we don't also at the same time have quality of life?
Exactly. No, I mean it's a lot of people come into Nava like wondering, like to your point, right? They might have a health goal of losing a certain amount of weight, and they want to know how long are they committing to this, or how long should they be coming to Nava. And yes, like we can certainly help you achieve that goal to lose those pounds. But when you really start thinking about longevity, right? Being proactive and being preventative, right? This new way of thinking of how people should be approaching their health, right? To be proactive and preventative, right? There is no time limit on it, right? Like this is a lifestyle. This is a life change. We are with you in this for life because once you lose that weight, right, it's about sustaining that weight loss, but then also we're an aging population, right? We're constantly coming across more toxic environmental toxins, food additives that eventually our body is going to need some help with and assistance with that, we can be with you every step of the way, for the rest of your life. Because our goal, right, just like yours, is to prevent chronic disease, is to prevent illness, right? To be proactive, not reactive like the traditional medicine system is. So I think what you're preaching is spot on. One of the things that I think can use your help with people understanding is right is where biohacking, longevity, right? There's all these wearables and all these cool gadgets and all these cool companies out there. Those are great, right? But when you think about sustainable health, right? What are the foundational pillars that people really should focus on that, necessarily doesn't have to be the wearables just yet?
Oh, yes. I think they come in, maybe not last, but they come in a lot later. So, some of the foundations, and again, many of those seem a little bit boring or not so sexy as these biohacking topics, such as like, oh, if I'm going to jump in in the sauna every single day, I'm going to live 10 years longer type of thing. But no, it really starts from those basic things that we do on a daily basis anyway, such as food, obviously, which is what I'm dedicating most of my work to, but also movement and also sleep. So I think those three things, if we tackle them first in a again sustainable manner, we're gonna get a lot of bang for our buck, and it doesn't matter so much, if you're having those certain that X supplement, or if you are going in the cold plunge every couple of days. So if we focus on, let's start with the movement first, because we are already kind of touched on sleep a little bit. Really, my approach is so much based on where are we even starting off with, because I cannot give a general prescription as much as I always like to give listeners practical takeaways. Um, if I just say, oh, everybody needs to work out 5 times a week, that's not going to apply to 50% at least of the listeners here. Some people are going to have to just start with walking. Some people might, okay, benefit from starting with a 3 times per week, 2 times per week resistance training program. And that could even start as simple as just body weight exercises. It could also be going to a proper gym and learning some of the basic lifts. Other people that are already doing that might want to optimize their routine and think about, is what I'm really doing, because I'm working out 5 times a week already, but I still don't look the way that I want to look and I don't feel as good as I want to feel. is that really bringing me towards my goal? Because I, for example, work a lot with women that are already quite active and that already think I'm eating quite well, but it's just not showing and I'm not feeling how I want to feel. So, very often with these women, the case is more a matter of they might be doing too much HIIT and not actually enough resistance training that's actually targeting the areas that they really want to strengthen, that they really want to have a better posture in, and so on. So, we're in then those cases reducing the amount of just random group fitness classes, or sometimes also reducing cardio and adding in a little bit more of the hypertrophy slash strength training. And then for other people, or for those people sometimes too, it's actually a matter of adding more rest. So it really depends on where you at on that spectrum. So I encourage anybody listening just to take inventory of like, where am I at? And then what is my next step from there? The next little best thing that I can do. Again, for some people, that might be taking more rest. So I'm really, really big on optimizing that movement bucket, so to speak. And with that, we can, of course, fine tune cardio depending on whether someone wants to lose body fat or whether someone wants to focus more on cardiovascular health or not. But what I would say, and I do think that that is something helpful for nearly everybody, is walking, just being a little bit more active in your day to day life. And I know that particularly in the US, unfortunately, the life is just not laid out anymore for leading an active day to day life. I am located in South America and I originally come from Germany. Both of those locations are or require a lot more physical activity just to get by, to get your groceries. Yeah, sure, it is getting quote unquote worse with all the delivery services. But generally speaking, for example, I'll tell you about my visit to Germany last year, where I was just curious how many steps my mom would take on average, because she's like a busy bee, always moving around, doing something in the garden. She's taking her bicycle to go to her workplace and so on. And so I gave her my Apple Watch for a few days, and without even trying, she was averaging between like around about 15,000 steps without trying, like no intentional one. And then
Yeah.
most people that I work with in the US, on average, if they're not trying, they get about 2 or 3,000 steps. And actually, walking is, in my opinion, one of the greatest things we can all add to our routine. Just parking further away from the grocery store, just after every meal, going for a 5 or 10 minute postprandial walk to actually help our blood sugar regulation, help our digestion. Maybe even like walking the kids to school or so, setting a good example there, teaching them that no matter what the weather is like, we all need activity. And on top of the physical benefits and the additional calorie burn, which actually should not be underestimated. But anyway, on top of all of that, I also think walking has immense mental benefits. For me, it's actually a form of meditation. And not everybody likes to sit down meditation. Not everybody likes to do journaling or any kind of other introspective work like that, which is also helpful with creating a sustainable, healthy lifestyle. So I think walking can be wonderful. You can also use it to listen to a podcast to get your motivation. And if you really must, you can use it to answer phone calls or something like that. So I'm a huge fan for walking, and I do think that is for basically anybody who doesn't necessarily have any restriction. So that's kind of the movement bucket. I don't know if you'd add anything to that particular bucket before I go into the nutrition.
No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think as most of these categories, it's more in particular, movement, exercise, and the food side of things, right? A lot of people think, more is good or more is better, right? And that's not necessarily the case, right? Um, it needs to be very, and to your point, where you can't just like spit out a bunch of, here's what I think everybody should be doing. Here's how many, hit trainings, uh, strength trainings they should do, because it really needs to be geared to that individual, right? And I think a lot of people, you know, think that just because they're doing something, right? I mean, something's better than nothing, right? But a lot of people automatically assume because they are going to yoga every day, or they are doing Pilates, or they are doing something that automatically makes them healthy and doing the right way. And a lot of the times, to what you pointed out, They could be, you know, overworking out, right? Not getting enough rest or not doing enough of, strength training. So there's really that personalization and individualization that people are missing, is that your plan might not be your friends that you're, constantly going to the same classes with. So that's why you really need to listen to your body to understand what it's telling you and what it needs from you.
Yeah, and I'll take that one step further. I even think we need to revise that regularly for ourselves, because just because something was quote unquote working for you in your 20s does not
Yep.
mean it is the right approach when you're 45 and you have a lot more workload or responsibilities at work. You have two kids and just in general going through hormonal issues. That is really something that I encounter quite often, where people are like, I haven't changed anything, neither my food nor my activity. Why am I piling on weight? And like that, this is going back to the stress point, or going back to the point of your body tolerates something for so long. We're just, it doesn't work that way. We do need to work with the phases, work with the stress levels of our life. And I guess, yeah, that leads me to that second bucket of nutrition. Of course, the same thing applies there. Just because something works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for you. And that's why dogmatic approaches, I'm really not a fan of. If someone tells you, oh, carnivore diet is the best, or the vegan diet is the best, and since I've started doing this, all the skin pores are beautiful and whatever, it might be working for them. It might do wonders for them, maybe even just for a certain amount of time and not long term. But let's find what works best for you. And most of the time
Exactly.
it's going to be not an approach that is so overly restrictive, again, because that's not going to be sustainable for the most party. But most people, what happens if you want to go to a birthday party and have a slice of cake, or if you don't know how to navigate travel or work lunches or something like that, what are you going to do then? So I do think there are some things that generally can be helpful when it comes to nutrition for the majority of people, such as, for example, we want to eat mostly whole foods. So if you choose to mostly have a plant-based diet, still should be mostly whole foods. It should not be these franken foods of like looks like chicken type thing but has 50 ingredients. And at the same time, if you're doing keto, it should also not just be processed keto. So whole foods for the most part for everybody. I usually say, like, try to eat mostly whole foods, unprocessed foods, or minimally processed foods 80-90% of the time, and allow yourself 10-20% of flexibility when it comes to the rest of it. I think that is a good rule for everyone. On top of that, I am a fan of fiber. Again, we currently have a big crowd there on the social net that's like saying carnivore diet, you don't need fiber. In my opinion, and from what I read in the literature, many meta-analyses and so on, demonstrating how beneficial fiber is, not just to help you poop, by the way, but also for cholesterol, so like heart health and many other correlating factors. So I do encourage my clients to eat a variety of vegetables and fruit, and yes, to include a grain such as oats or whatever, as long as you're tolerating them. And then I think another part which pretty much anybody can benefit from is eating sufficient protein. And that is really something where many people, if they have never tracked how much or what they're eating, even if they think, oh, I have one egg in my breakfast and I have like a tiny little bit of, I have some chicken in my lunch and I do eat yogurt every day, that should be enough protein. Most of the time when we start actually recording your food, we find out, oh, okay, you should be eating 130 grams of protein and you're not even at 60. So let's bump that up. And many times I see a lot of positive things happening when we do get to that right consistent protein intake, such as better satiation levels, less cravings, such as better blood sugar control, and overall better recovery from training, better sleep, and so on. So I think those three quote unquote general rules of like mostly whole foods, eating your fiber, and eating your protein will get the majority of people very far. And then of course from there we're going to fine tune things such as quantities, such as Are we more athletic population? How many carbohydrates do we need? Healthy fats in order to help with hormone balance and so on. But that is already kind of the next level. So if someone's just starting off and like has had enough from Christmas and New Year's and is eating a traditional Western diet, just literally focusing on whole foods, protein, and fiber, you're going to make big strides when you also add the movement piece and that last bucket of like sleep optimization, trying to get to your 7+ hours per night if you can. And if you're currently sleeping those 4 to 5 hours that I used to sleep after or in the police, just giving yourself grace and slowly building on that is actually very meaningful. Even if you get 10 minutes more, even if you get 20 minutes more, if you start dialing back your caffeine consumption and so on, like every little change over time compiled will make a big difference.
Before we continue, I want to share something deeply personal, the real reason my family started Nava Health. Over a decade ago, my mom was on her deathbed. Her organs were failing, and the doctors told us there was nothing they could do except keep her comfortable. In that moment, everything changed. We realized traditional medicine had limits, especially when it came to proactive and preventative root cause medicine built for long term health span and lifespan. At Nava Health, we take a data driven precision approach to longevity. We test over 90 biomarkers to uncover exactly what's happening inside your body, and we build a personalized plan designed around your unique biology. Because fatigue, brain fog, weight gain, they're not random, they're signals. And when you listen, your body can heal. This is functional longevity medicine done right, comprehensive, proactive, and built to help you feel and perform your best at any age. Go to navacenter.com and take control of your health today. Now back to the show. I think it's so critical to point out the all the dogmatic information that people are giving around these all or nothing diets, right? Where this one size fits all. Everyone should be on this diet. Everyone should be on that. Carnivore is the best. I mean, it couldn't be so far from the truth as to this one size fits all, because like you said, everyone has their own unique needs. Not everyone is as active, or their bodies are as deficient in the same nutrients as the next person. So to think that there's one diet that is best for everybody, I mean, it's just not true, right? It needs to be personalized, just like strength training. It needs to be, individualized, to that individual and their unique needs. And you know, I think it's funny to, when I am on social media, to see these people who are once, you know, full bore carnivores are now doing, alternate carnivore diets that they are now including fiber, healthy fats, and things like that. That it kind of just shows you that they might have just been doing it for clickbait, and now they realize that there's a lot more to it than just carnivore, right? But I think what you said very clearly, that majority of people, if you're eating a whole foods diet, focusing on your fibers, your veggies, your fruits, and lean proteins, and trying to limit your sugars, trying to definitely eliminate as much of that processed food as possible. That makes a world's difference.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely. Yeah, and
focusing on that, right? And you've made it sustainable, right? That is very simple, right? And people try to make things, more complex than they need to be. Unfortunately, I just think that's how, the world processes things right now. But, they think this art of eating healthy is so difficult and so hard. But, what you just outlined is so simple that if someone can't understand what a whole food what whole foods are, what counts as a veggie, a fruit, and lean protein, I mean, it's hard to mess up, and it's very simple.
yeah, absolutely. And I think the irony is that sometimes people think if they put themselves on a strict diet, it's simpler for them. So, like, for example, with that carnivore diet, it sounds simple because you literally cut everything out except for meat. But in the long run, it's not simpler than learning to navigate your life with these three quote unquote rules. I don't even want to call them rules because it's not hard, but with these three suggestions that I just gave. And I think the sad thing is nowadays, or with social media and so on, also is that you can pretty much find a study to back up most claims if the audience is not well read in how to actually read the research. So, like, for example, if you compare someone who is on a carnivore diet, and sorry for anyone listening out there, where I'm not specifically bashing the carnivore diet, but let's just use that as an example. If you compare that person with someone who eats a ultra processed diet, like regular standard American diet, for a few weeks, and then I'm not surprised that the person on the carnivore diet might have better blood markers as losing weight and so on, because they're cutting out all that sugar and so on. So of course you're going to see some positive benefits, and maybe that person feels better and blah, 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 blah. But A, where is that person at, 20 years down the road? And B, why are we comparing those extremes? Why can't we add in someone who is eating a balanced diet with fiber, with all of this? So it is very hard to actually weed through all the research or all the claims that people are making nowadays. And I mean, of course, there's not only negative things associated with social media, because back in the day we only had like government recommendations, which by no means were necessarily better. If
Yeah.
you're looking at some of the past food hierarchies or food pyramids that were recommended. But yeah, nonetheless, I totally agree with what you said.
No, I mean, I think, the way to approach, this scenario, and even just like social media, is that people need to understand and look at it a little bit more, with context into what it's actually talking about, when it's actually used. Social media, right? It's giving people a platform who are providing, very tactical information for people to apply to their everyday life, right? That is extremely beneficial. That might be their place, to get the news, right? So there are some, very good people out there that provide great information that I think are useful to make things sustainable. And I'm not sitting here either to say that the carnivore diet um, can't be used as a good tool, right? All these different diets, and this is another reason why, you know, the average person should seek to work with a professional with this, who does this every day, who has the knowledge, who has the training on how to use these different tools that we call, these different diets, whether it's intermittent fasting, whether it's caloric restriction, whether it is carnivore. um, they can be used as tools for certain uh, uh, diagnoses, certain conditions, or certain goals that someone's trying to achieve, that they can be used in moderation and be very beneficial. But ultimately, it does need to be rounded out by coming back to, the foundation, right? So I do think that there are certain diets out there that, like I said, they can be tools that are in our toolbox to use when needed, when necessary. And I think that's a lot of the thing that people kind of miss the point on, is, right, is not this all or nothing thing, and that carnivore diet is the way of life, right? If someone was doing carnivore diet, it should be for a specific reason, some sort of health condition, right? That they are trying to use that for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest. I have even used the carnivore diet with a client myself in the past, where she had so many gastrointestinal issues and had literally gone through all kinds of elimination diets, low FODMAP, whatever. So we just decided we're going to pull it straight back just to meat, and then build on that back in. Or yeah, things like the low FODMAP diet and so on. I've used many of those with clients, but as you mentioned, for most people, this should just be a tool. And then in order to make the way of eating sustainable, we have added foods back in. And unless there's like really severe intolerances and so on, bringing certain things back in, I think, is very helpful when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah. No, I mean, at a physiological level, right? The body adapts to patterns, right? Not the intentions. So, what actually happens metabolically and hormonally when people live on chronic restriction?
Oh, that's, yeah, very, very common, as we mentioned, or especially also with the people that I work with. And it's again very amazing that our bodies are so adaptable, because if we're thinking back of like, why did this mechanism even come into existence? Of course, way back in the day, we had to be able to go through hunger periods, through where there literally was no food around, and so on. And so at first, sure, when people start a diet nowadays, also you lose weight, you're motivated, and so on. And most of the time, at some point, there comes a plateau, and that usually is because your metabolism has sort of realized, okay, there's less food available, so I'm simply going to down regulate a little bit. It doesn't mean your metabolism is broken. There's no such thing as a broken metabolism. It's just metabolic adaptation. And usually the next step, literally, and this is nothing even bad in coaching, we just acknowledge, okay, we're plateauing a little bit. So most of the time we're just adapting or adjusting the calorie target to a little bit lower, and the person continues to lose weight. And ideally, at some point after a few weeks, we get to their goal weight. Hooray. And unless or unlike people that don't work with a professional, we're going to start a reverse diet, which means we're strategically going to increase the calories back up to a maintenance level. So same amount of calories going in as going out. So that would be the proper way to do it. Now, of course, nobody teaches you that if you're trying to lose weight on your own. So what usually happens is people either simply go back to their previous way of eating, and because your hunger signals are going to be up at that point in time, your body wants you to gain the weight back, because of course it is beneficial for survival to have that extra little cushion around the belly, and to be a little bit or to have some extra body fat levels. So at that time, most of the time, people yo-yo back, gain the weight back, if not more, and hence the cycle starts of going back on the diet and so on. But to bring it back to your question, the other scenario that I often see is people go through a diet, they lose weight, and then they're so terrified to eat more again because it was working. And so why don't I just stay at this really low calorie level? And then after a while, we're starting to see those hormonal issues. We're starting to see people being more anxious, people getting more injured, and all those kinds of things, because it is essentially a chronic stressor, as you said as well. And on top of that, if we then lead a stressful lifestyle and so on, it's really no good. And further to that, sometimes we haven't even reached our goal weight yet, but still we're just staying for half a year or whatever at these really low calories. So that's really not ideal, because then again, this is your new maintenance. Even though in the beginning, when you started off, maybe 2,000 calories was your maintenance, then you reduced to 1,800 and then 16, and now you're stuck at this 1,300 calorie level, which many women that come to me, they're like, I feel like I'm not eating anything and I'm actually gaining weight. I'm actually putting more weight on around that midsection and so on. So really the only option we have at that time is we do need to do that reverse diet that I was mentioning earlier, and not just going through that for a few weeks time, but actually then staying at your maintenance calories. So like at your real maintenance calories for some time, focusing on simply nourishing your body, giving your hormones a little love, giving your metabolism love in that way. And the way that I like to kind of compare it to, or what I like to explain it with, it really is like a laptop sort of thing. So imagine you want to start a diet, your laptop is fully charged, you take it off the charger, it's going well, everything's going to keep running super well, no issues. That's you losing the weight. After a while, you're going to see maybe it's going to start switch the dimmer switch or whatever. So okay, this is our first plateau. Then we're reducing calories further. Maybe the backup processes on the laptop stop working so well. So that's you not sleeping so well anymore. That's you maybe having less energy in your training. You becoming a little bit more anxious. And then at some point, the warning lights go on your laptop, like, please charge. And you're still not really charging at all. So what we then need to do is that recovery or reverse diet, where we're plugging the laptop back in. And it's still going to be several weeks before you're fully functioning again. And even then, it's not really worth it just unplugging it right away. So we really need to stay at that maintenance for a while, ideally, and that's where your work comes in so nicely. Ideally, we want to have the confirmation through lab work of like, hey, okay, your testosterone is no longer super low. All your other sex hormones are in a good place too. Your thyroid hormones are optimally now we can start our diet again and get you to where you actually wanted to go. But yeah, if we don't do that, if we just chronically stay at low calories, your thyroid hormones are going to take a hit. You are probably going to store or put on more weight around that midsection because of the higher stress on your body, and you're just going to feel like shit. So yeah, many
Yeah.
reasons not to chronically stay at low calories.
Yeah, I mean, I think people don't truly understand, right? Because they heard something on social media or on the news about, caloric restriction or intermittent fasting. Again, these are tools. They can be beneficial, they can be used. But like you said, our bodies adapt, right? And we're all about metabolic flexibility, right? That shows, health if you are able to adapt and your body is doing what it's supposed to, right? To your point, your metabolism isn't broken, right? It's responding exactly as it's been designed, right? And that's, one thing that people just need to keep in mind is that you know, you're just getting that short little snippet online for the 30 seconds of talking about the diet, but they're not talking about how to come off that diet and what happens once you've been on that for a while. And just having that metabolic flexibility is so important, just for long-term health. So one of the things that I think aren't talked about enough, and me and you have had this talk, is just this mindset first for health, right? Being the CEO of your health, right? I truly believe that health is a leadership skill, right? You can't have anything in life if you're not healthy, right? You can have all the problems in the world until you're sick, and then you have one problem. And that same discipline is required in business or parenting, and applies here. So for you, what do you see on a day-to-day basis of just how important the mindset is in nutrition success?
It is huge. It really is one of those foundational pillars along with the movement and training and sleep, or maybe not even along, but like as the base of that too. Because only if we are taking full ownership of like everything goes into my body is my responsibility. Sure, there might have been social pressure, but it's my responsibility. Or nobody's gonna go and even if I pay a personal trainer, he's not gonna put in the work for you. You still need to do the work. And I mean, how wonderful would it be if we all had someone who was constantly like cooking for us, preparing the meals for us, and helping us move in the right way and monitoring our health? And, that's not the reality. Reality is we need to be proactive. And as you mentioned too, unfortunately, the healthcare system doesn't work that way either. No doctor is going to call you every 3 months. Oh, by the way, you're due for blood work. And by the way, it would be great if you took these and those supplements. And by the way, maybe you have thought about exposing yourself to more sunlight or so. No, that is not the reality. So we are the only people responsible for our own health. You can also not blame your partner. You cannot blame your kids. No, you are the only one. And so I think it's the sooner we accept that and the sooner we build on that, the better. So basically, again, going back to the point of taking inventory of where am I at, where do I want to get better at, and what can I actually achieve, again, in a sustainable way. And so I think once we lay that out as a foundation, and just realize that we need to have plans, we need to have structures and so on to make our life easy, or to make that as easy as possible, the better. And that can be so many things. I think if we just get into the practice of reviewing things on a regular basis, we do that for so many things. I mean, schools do that even when we're little. You have your regular reviews, you have your regular, how performance analysis in business and so on. But we don't really do that for our personal lives where we should. And this has really been one of the biggest game changers for me initially when I wanted to start my own business, or when I wanted to transition out of the police into nutrition coaching, to just begin with, okay, what does my morning routine look like? What does my night routine look like? Just starting with that. Then, okay, how can I build in more like a weekly review on Sundays. Where am I at with my body? What do I want to get out of the coming week? What things did I do well or didn't do so well in the past week? And again, a coach can be really, really helpful for that, because ideally a good coach should ask you the right questions or should hold you accountable to doing some kind of review on a regular basis. But if not, you can do that on your own too. I mean, there are many forms even online where you could be like, weekly review, how do I get better, or something like that. And I mean, we're recording this at the beginning of the year, so ideally maybe some people have even set out some goals for the year. I am actually a fan of, not, I don't want to call them New Year's resolutions, but I mean, this is kind of a chance, an opportunity to use the momentum of the beginning of the new year for kind of laying out like, where am I at and where do I want to go to. But yeah, if we do that on a regular basis for everything, we can do our meal planning that way. We can lay out our training. Am I on the right track? Am I actually making progress? Should I change something? In my opinion, one of the main reasons why people don't live the life that they want, or never like look back on their life and think, I wish I would have, is because they never define what they actually want. Like, we are just so used to just stepping into the footsteps that are laid out in front of us from society, from what we think are expectations from our parents or whatever. And you're like, oh, isn't it normal to go to college, to get a loan, to build a house, to get married? And that might be what works for a lot of people, and to an extent. And I have absolutely no issues with that, as long as it's conscious choices. And I was in that situation too, where I simply just followed steps for a long time, and then at some point asked myself, why am I so unhappy? Technically, like on paper, I should have everything that I want, but I'm really, really unhappy when it comes to my body, when it comes to my work, when it comes to personal things. And it wasn't until I really realized, like, I'm doing a lot of things I don't actually want to be doing, or that are not really leading me anywhere. I'm just busy for busyness sake without getting anywhere. And I think if you never take the time to break out of that, it's easy to have regrets in life. And that's really one of the things that I want to also help people, or prevent people from, to live a mediocre life, to get to the end of their life, or even just at any stage in their life where, like, I thought that there was more to this. I thought that I could feel better than this. I thought that, I wanted something different, but I'm quote unquote stuck here. You're never stuck. It's never too late. Even if you're in your 50s or 60s, it's not too late to start a training program. Even in your 80s, there's research studies showing that even if you start a resistance training program in your 80s, you're going to build muscle. It's never too late. And yeah, I really think that having those regular review times might even just be during your daily walks, might even just be when you're under the shower, that you're intentionally thinking about, what am I grateful for today? What can I do better today? How can I show up as a better dad or a better mom, and so on. I think those are the moments, even if they seem small, they can really elicit really, really big change.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think, that's something that we can all do a better job of, is kind of just taking some inventory of our life, taking some responsibility, reflecting. Um, I truly believe that everything that we do should be done with intention, um, and being purposeful, with it, and being intentional with, what we decide to put in our bodies, being intentional with the type of movement that we're going to have throughout the day, the intention of how we're going to, achieve a goal or a dream, right? It's, a dream without a plan will just stay a dream, so you got to have a plan to be able to execute that. And so having that intention, but taking that time to really, put it down on paper, it'll change your life if you kind of just, obviously life can be crazy, it can be busy, um, but I mean, when you to your point, when you're in the shower, right? Just taking, that 5 to 10 minutes of reflecting, and even just saying to yourself, okay, here's what I'm going to do today, or here's what I accomplished today, here's what I'm going to do better tomorrow. Just the whole thought, your whole thought process and mindset will just slowly start to shift, and you know, your world will completely change.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is the little things. It is even other things like taking 3 deep breaths before you eat. That'll put you into like a parasympathetic state and make you digest things a lot more, make you appreciate your food a lot more. Or, after your workout, not immediately running to the shower and car and then going about your day, but maybe just laying down for 3 minutes, or again taking some deep breaths. Like, breath in my opinion is another thing that's really really underutilized when it comes to dealing with stressful situations or life in general. So yeah, I think it is the small things, the small habits that we get into, that can either make our life a lot worse or a lot better in the long run.
Yeah. No, of course. So, why do you think people thrive on the extremes but fail at the moderation?
Oh yeah. That's a good one. I think, um, it again, going to that point of like, well, it's not simpler, but it sounds, first of all, it sounds better. The motivation initially is probably higher because you're like, oh, I'm doing something extreme. I'm doing this. I'm cutting it out completely. No sugar, nothing processed at all. Um, but when it comes to the moderation, it just doesn't sound as enticing initially, and we're going to progress a lot slower. That is the reality of it. And we don't really, most of us anyway, don't really like slow progress. We feel like feeling like we're actually, like the work we're putting in is actually bearing some fruit, as opposed to, if you just start a meditation practice, it's not something where after a week you're going to feel like a new human being. I mean, after, even if you meditate for 3 minutes every day, or if you start doing some breath work, you're probably not going to feel like, wow, this really gave me a huge ROI. Like, I don't, whereas if you, from today to tomorrow, you start quote unquote clean eating, and you cut down 500 calories, and you do an immense change with your exercise program, you're going to feel pretty different tomorrow. And so you think more of that is better. You think more of that extreme is better. But yes, that's not the case, because again, we don't think about how it's compounding over time. And is this something we can keep up with over time? This is again where the mindset piece comes in so much, because we shouldn't just think of like, how am I feeling right now, but switch on your logic a little bit and think about, how is this going to feel in 6 months time or 6 years time? Is this something I'm going to keep on doing, even though right now the return is not so great? And I do think that applies to business as well. That applies to many things. The people that are not just focused on the return or the immediate, well, it is a form of gratification, I guess, if you see the immediate result of the weight coming off or so. If you're not just focused on that, but you're thinking about the long term gratification, then you're going to be much more successful.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think one thing that people don't realize is just how impactful stress can be, right? Your nutrition can look perfect, but being stressed can shut down fat loss. It can shut down recovery. It can impact your sleep. It can impact so many different areas of health that, stress can truly kill you. So, how does that stress and the sleep and recovery get impacted, compared to, if people are just, well, I eat healthy and I don't know why I'm losing weight.
Well, yeah, I think stress overall, again, your body's not going to prioritize the weight loss if you are under a lot of stress overall. So, as you mentioned, just emotional stress can be a stressor, work stress is a stressor. Then maybe your training is too stressful. On top of that, maybe your hormones are all out of whack, and you do have a lot of endocrine mimicking chemicals in your environment as well. So, stress. Your body is going to prioritize just your survival. It's the last thing it's going to think of is like, I need to oxidize some fat right now in order to get you even skinnier, to endanger your survival even more. So that just, it doesn't work. And as soon, like sometimes it's as easy as people sleeping more, and they're like, wow, I took a deload week from training, and I actually managed to sleep 7 hours or 8 hours every night, and I've dropped 3 pounds even though I didn't change anything. And it doesn't seem really logical, again, because we sometimes think more is better and more activity is better, and we feel switched on because of all that adrenaline rushing through us and so on. But it is a good lesson for people to learn just how impactful mitigating those smaller stressors can really be.
Forward thinking, right? Where do you see the future of nutrition and coaching heading? And, what do you feel that people truly need to kind of unlearn to be able to take those steps forward and see progress?
Well, I think to every movement, we always see like a counter movement. And there was a bit of a time over the last couple of years where actually many nutrition coaches were quite afraid of their job situation because of AI as well. And of course, we have see all these, we have apps with nutrition tracking and so on. And I too, with my clients, use a calorie tracking app. But I think people were moving more into like a electronic kind of based direction. But what I have seen over the last year or so is that people are starting to really appreciate that one-on-one connection, that personalization again. So I think that that's a big one. And I do think that even though we're going more into the extreme of like biohacking peptides and all the beautiful stuff that if used correctly can be of good assistance, but I do think with that too, thankfully the message of like the basics are the most important thing is being echoed more and more from what I hear from the big podcasters, from the big platforms, from the people that are truly evidence based, where it's like, here's another study on sleep, here's another study on resistance training, here's another meta-analysis about protein, here's another. So hopefully that will at some point over or outdo and sink through to the just influencer crowd as well, or the people that are trying to be dogmatic.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, look, at the end of the day, there will never be a magic pill. There will never be something that is as impactful as the basics, like you stated, right? The future of health is sustainability. It's not the extremes, and the sustainability are those basics: your sleep, your nutrition, your movement, and how you manage stress. Another big piece that we talked about before, right? It's just the whole mindset behind health and how you take care of yourself. But then also, another piece I think that gets missed a lot, that there's a ton of studies out there, is community, right? That sense of purpose
Yes.
that I don't think is spoken about enough. And obviously, we live in this day of age of technology that we can easily hop on a Teams call or a Zoom chat like this, um, and yes, it still brings us to that connection with others, but still having that community that you can connect with. They can hold each other accountable, and just having that real sense of purpose and belonging. um, you know, I I don't know how it can be measured, but it's one of the things that, in some of the, blue zones that, showed, is that, these people had this community and this sense of purpose, and that, was part of the reasons why they're able to be these centenarians.
Yeah, I think it's so funny because I believe many people think, social connections should just come naturally about like either you have them or you don't, or you meet friends or you don't. But it is also something that actually needs to be curated and created consciously. And I, as a digital nomad, know that probably almost better than anybody because, you know, nobody, I don't know people when I get to a place at first. So I need to really embrace the scary, put myself out there, approach people in the coffee shop, in the gym, in just literally, oh hey, do you want to work out with me tomorrow? I like the way the your workout style or something, and that. I mean, sometimes you'll hear no, and other times people will be like, "Yeah, for sure, why not? I see that you're new here anyway. I'll show you around." Or so, and that applies to people that live in the same place most of the time. Also, you need to be proactive when it comes to your relationships as well if you want them to foster. And it seems easier sometimes to just hide behind our cell phones and scroll that way, or like, oh, I just want to watch Netflix, and it's too exhausting to go out and meet somebody or to put in the effort. But even there, I mean, we can do a lot of things in community with like-minded people, and it will make things even better. Actually, like if you find a good workout partner, or even if you, find communities online where healthy eating is encouraged, recipes are exchanged, and you have a place to voice your issues or your struggles as well. That is really really helpful.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, I have a few more questions, but before we wrap this up, that I just want to quickly go through. The first one is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Oh, um, it'll probably be the right thing and the hard thing are usually the same thing to do. So if people are sitting in front of decisions or are contemplating something, I think that that's often very helpful. Like the right thing and the hard thing are usually the same thing.
I love that. No, that's pretty strong. Next one is, what's the biggest problem that you are trying to solve today?
The biggest problem I'm trying to solve is people not feeling content in their body, whether it's due to not knowing the right approach or not being able to follow the right approach that they already know, or misbelief, like not having the belief in themselves. So yeah, that would probably be good.
All right. And then the last question is, when it's all said and done, what's the legacy that you want to leave behind?
I want to leave behind the legacy that nobody should settle for mediocrity, whether it pertains to the quality of their life or the kind of life that they're living. And everyone deserves to live an amazing life, but you need to work for it.
I love that. Now, I truly believe that fostering these conversations truly matter because, it gives people permission to, stop punishing themselves, in the name of health, right? Sustainable health isn't weak, right? It's just being disciplined, it's being intentional, and you're building yourself up for, really the long game, right? Real leadership starts with your body, your habits, and just your ability to stay consistent, even when life gets hard. That's something that is always going to happen. Bad things happen in life, whether you want them to or not. You're going to be faced with adversity, but it's not, it doesn't define who you are when you face that. What defines who you are is how you take that adversity and how you move on from there and how you move forward. So, Lisa, I really appreciate you coming on to the show. Love this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to my listeners and viewers being able to listen to this.
Thank you so much for having me on, Zach. I love how aligned our approaches are, and truly the work that you and Nava Health are doing is absolutely amazing. So keep crushing it.
No, thank you. If today's conversation sparked something in you, here's what I want you to do right now. Pick one strategy, one insight, one small action you heard today, and commit to it this week. Excellence isn't built in moments. It's built in the daily decisions that compound over time. Remember, you're not just building a healthier body or a more successful career. You're building a legacy that will outlast you. And that starts with the standards you set today. Thanks for listening to the Legacy and Longevity Podcast. If this episode was valuable, first subscribe so you never miss an episode. Then leave us a review to help more people find these conversations. And finally, share it with someone who you think needs to hear it. Until next Tuesday, keep raising the bar, keep pushing your limits, and keep stacking days. I'm Zach Dancel. Your legacy starts now.